I believe that everyone's using their really expensive gaming mice incorrectly, and I want to explain to you and prove it to you why. So you can follow along at home if you want, just to really prove it to yourself. And the key point is this grid in Windows, okay? Now, everyone kind of sets this, maybe they leave it where it is, they never touch it. You know, they just make sure to turn off pointer precision. Maybe some people put it down one, maybe people put it there. There's no consensus on where to put it correctly. So, I've looked into this and I've really thought it through and I want to prove it to you. So, if you set this to fast, and we'll just for the sake of argument, turn this down really low. Okay, we'll click apply to make sure it's applied. Okay, now, when I move my cursor, you can see it jumps between these points here. And what that is there is an invisible grid in Windows where your mouse can move between two set points and they move along this grid, okay? And what this slider does is it changes how far apart these points are. So if we set this slider all the way to slow, okay, and I use a trackpad to navigate now, because my mouse is really slow and that's a pain. Okay, and I'll actually, for the sake of argument, leave this exactly where it is as well. Okay, now, when I move my mouse, you can see that these points are, I'll have to move my mouse quite fast. There you go. You see how you'll move along the pixels themselves rather than this invisible grid where it's like a millimeter in size. So just to show you again, slide it all the way to fast, and then we go along, and you can see it jumps. I'm not jagging the mouse like this. That's just how Windows moves the cursor. That's an invisible grid, and you're navigating around it. So when you set your motion in Windows to fast, the points are far apart. When you set it to the middle, they're about here. And when you set it to slow, the points are much closer. And what that means is when you're playing a game and you're trying to shoot someone in a first-person shooter really far away, and they're in between this grid, you won't be able to shoot them because your mouse can't navigate between this spot. Whereas if you set your settings to slow, this becomes much smaller and you have far higher resolution to be able to shoot people. Problem is when it's all the way down there, your mouse is really slow. So we click apply, and then you have to set your DPI. This is what you're paying for with your expensive gaming mice, is your high DPI, and now you can use it like a normal mouse again. Brilliant, okay? So now when you play a first-person shooter game with your DPI set really high and your mouse speed set really low, you can shoot people really accurately far away. That's it, okay? Now, you might have a mouse I've got an expensive mouse, so you might have a mouse with, like, say, 12,000 DPI, in which case it's totally fine to jump this up by one, click apply, and then find what DPI suits you best. So the correct way to find your settings in a first-person shooter is to say find an object and look at it, and then do a full 360, and then at the exact same spot, and then you measure on your desk how much your mouse has moved. I personally like it where when my mouse moves 15 centimeters, it does a full 360, and then I can follow these settings between all the games, and then it's very concise, so it's the same movement across everything. And I recommend you do that first before changing these settings. Sorry if you didn't make a note. And that's it. When I play a first-person shooter, it feels smoother, and you can tell that when you're moving around anywhere. Okay, when you look at something in the distance, it doesn't jump as much. The next thing, I have had issues with this in Rust, where when I'm standing still or running in a straight line, I get 120 FPS. But as soon as I start to look to the side, the game has to, take input of all of these micro movements, and my FPS drops whenever I look around. And you might find that, in which case, now you know there's some games where you can't have these settings set to that. That's just something to look out for, and a problem I experienced. I think it's to do with the game engine, so Battlefield doesn't have that problem, or other first-person shooters, just Rust in particular. So I hope you found this useful, and you're finally able to get your money's worth out of your gaming mouse. I appreciate I'm a small YouTube channel, so if you could send this to Optimum Tech, who's a big mouse nerd YouTuber, I'd love that, because then he can do a better job of this video and show it to more people. Thank you.